Hey, welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney and Fricke. Thanks for tuning in. All right, friends. So we're back for another episode for the Strategic Success Podcast. And I'm looking forward to, Leigh, you and I met on Clubhouse a few years ago, and this is our first time really connecting. And I'm looking forward to having this conversation today. Appreciate you being with me.
It's an honor to be on your show, Courtney, and good to see you in almost real life. But, Instagram messages and all of your information you put out there has been the best way to get to know you, because I still want you to tell me where to buy that mobile home multi-unit that you posted like 4 years ago, and my guy doesn't tell it.
Yeah, maybe that'll come up. We'll have to talk about that. And that's wild. I think the biggest I saw was 5 units and 1 mobile home. So it blew my mind. But so Leigh, for the folks who don't know you, they're living underneath the rock, they don't know you. Give us an introduction. Who are you? What do you do? And where are you based out of?
Well, I'm Leigh Brown. I'm a realtor in Concord, North Carolina, and I'm coming at you from my office in downtown historic Concord, which is just outside of Charlotte. And currently, I'll let people know we're about an hour outside the devastation zone from Hurricane Helene. I've been a realtor for 24 years, mostly residential and a lot of multifamily as well. And I grew up here. I have a husband and 2 kids that are now officially launched as birds. I'm a bird launcher, not an empty nester. So obviously that makes me a busybody now because I have more time on my hands.
There you go. Well, so I know you've been doing, you've got very deep roots in your area. And then, this major storm happens with, Helene. And so you're doing a lot as far as efforts, you're organizing, bringing in supplies. And so you said that's about an hour from you where like the major devastation is. Like, give me some context for where you're at. Like, did your home get damaged? What does that look like?
So when you look at North Carolina, and I usually have a shape of it on my desk. I don't have one right now. So my state is long. And
Okay.
we always, in 4th grade, when you do North Carolina history, you divide it into 3 sections. You have the mountains and the Piedmont, and then you have the coast. So I'm in the Piedmont, the middle section, where we have the red clay dirt, and we are rolling, but we are not hilly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being about an hour outside of the mountain zone. The best thing has been I can be hub and spoke to go help, because I can go up in 2 hours to most areas, drop a load, be a help, and then get back out so that I'm not a burden on the resources up there.
Sure.
And at my house, where we are, we got like 6 inches of water. The backyard had some water in it. I live on a river, so it doesn't hit the house. But if you follow my Instagram, we had a flood in January where I lost 20 of my chickens, where they got washed away. It was horrifying, and I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen until Helene, and now I realized that was the learning phase for me, to see my chickens like little heads bobbing down the river and gone. But we lost power for, I don't know, like a day and a half, lost internet for a week, which, to look at the Facebook groups around me, you would think that the world had ended. These people had water, sewer, power, and just didn't have the interwebs, and they were very upset. Well, in the mountains, we've got counties that are, the estimate to get power back is 12 months, and they're only a month in now. So they're looking at power next fall. Yeah. And if they get it done fast, it'll be June. And that's kind of wild to think about. They also won't have good drinking water for a long time, because the water, even the groundwater for the wells, has been so devastated by the landslides and the toxic chemicals that have leached out from our mining operations. It's just hard to imagine that we're a first world country where people do not have water, they do not have good toilet facilities, and they don't have power and won't for some time. So geographically, I'm very grateful that I'm close enough to help. And I'm also grateful that I'm far enough away that I can help, because frankly, if I were a lot closer, I might not be able to be a resource. And so sometimes it's good to be outside the zone for other reasons.
Look, I get that. So I'm based in New Orleans. I was in high school when Katrina happened, but literally they shut down school. And so what did I do? My background, I was even doing, my background's in missions. I was doing missions in junior high and high school. So what did I go do? I went and spent my morning with, handing out supplies with the Salvation Army, and then my afternoons working with Convoy of Hope, like because I was out of school for a month until, but that was because, we were twiddling our thumbs and our schools were shelters and, all that. So, no, I can definitely appreciate that. So that helps me give me context for your location. So, you're talking about areas that like getting, electricity and water, that there's some areas where the devastation's so strong where that's they're hoping they can do it in that time frame. Obviously, manpower, resources, supplies and funding, all of those things come into play with that timeline. Um, and I want to talk about more of what you're seeing, but I know that in all of my experiences with Hurricane Katrina, Laura, Delta, Ida, and I actually even went to North Carolina and I worked. This is, I think I was a few years into being full time as an investor. And in 2018, when Florence hit, and
Oh,
I
I,
went, yeah, that one was wild. And I went and worked because I remember when I left my job in property management to go full time as a real estate investor, I said, I want to have freedom to be able not have to ask off, or we can go help people when there's a need, right? Um, but I did search and rescue. So some of my background is with, um, trauma training and, you know, so I went and worked with basically the Cajun Navy, but I did a lot with first responders with, search and rescue. I was one of the few females, and so they would always throw me on a rig because I'd be like one of the few females in the group. And major to see major devastation like that was wild, right? Like and to see where people are like, they've lost everything and they're like, I don't know where my next meal's gonna come from. And I don't know, like I have a few things, but I'm holding them, like I don't know where to put them, or I'm living in a shelter, like all of those wild things. And it just, until you've experienced, it's hard to say it, right? So, with that being said, let's talk through and to kind of keep it real estate focused, because for all of the people in the real estate industry that follow myself and you, let's give them some context real estate wise. Like, talk to me about what you're seeing. Do you see people, in those areas? Are they wanting to stay where they're at? Are they fleeing towards you in Concord and looking for rentals, looking to buy? Like, what are you seeing?
so that's one of the things that's been hard to explain. The people in the mountains are a different breed, and Appalachian life is a hard scrabble life. They don't want to leave their family land. And in fact, in week one, we encountered this one lady who all she had left was her flagpole and the remains of a storage shed. So it's kind of like acting like a lean-to.
Yeah.
I ain't going nowhere. Like, all right, yes, ma'am. There's no reason to argue with her. We're gonna get you what you need. She wasn't going anywhere. And there's lots of reasons. It's that the land is part of who you are. It's in your DNA. And that geography up there is just so special. But there's also a huge distrust of the government in the mountains for lots of good reasons. They've been cut out for generations. They don't want to leave their land because they're afraid they won't be able to come back. And I think that's a very big concern. So I got rentals available. Nobody wants to come this far away.
Yeah.
And then also there's your kids have already been through enough trauma. You don't want to yank them out of the community they know. And
Yeah.
when schools go back, that's going to give the kids some normalcy. So you've got all these different layers involved. And I
Yeah.
will say the investors in this area have been so generous. They have stepped up with Airbnbs, they've stepped up with rentals. And we're basically just trying to say, if you're a volunteer, why don't you go stay in the Airbnb and stay out of the hotels where the people are staying that have received the vouchers, which is not everybody, but it's a different discussion. So
Right.
the hotels are mostly full. Volunteers can stay here and drive in and out, but the resilience of mountain people is pretty special too, because you remember they go through. It's a different life when you're scratching a garden out of the side of a mountain where you have trees and
Yeah.
a lot of poverty in the mountains.
Yeah.
And but there's 10 cities. And so the thing that I
Sure.
wish people understood is that our geographic area that got hit is the size of most states, except for, of course, Texas and Alaska. So it's a big area.
Yeah.
You've got the city of Asheville. Asheville's getting its operations back up and running. Downtown is okay, and the commercial buildings will be okay, and the surrounding areas, they have power, they're getting water, it's not potable, but they're getting some water, and they're coming back, and it's a city. Boone, where Appalachian State is, has been the staging area for Samaritan's Purse, and it was hit very hard, but it's a city. They're getting back up and running. They're okay. You go over 45 minutes from Asheville to Swannanoa. Swannanoa took it in the chin, and the town is basically gone, and you have tent cities, and the tent cities are everywhere. And it's people who, a lot of them are renters, so they don't have big insurance to cover them. What they had was in somebody else's house. If they had renter's insurance, which many of them didn't, they've got no coverage. They've got nothing. And the thing that's not been talked about yet is the cars. Most of these people lost their cars. Well, if you are already living paycheck to paycheck, you can't afford a car, because think about how much cars went up during COVID era, and why the cheap cars don't exist is because of the Obama policy from 2009, the cash for clunkers that was designed to help juice the auto industry, destroyed our cheap used car market. So there's very few options. So they're stuck living in tent cities next to a city that's already coming back and talking about tourist dollars coming back. So it's a strange dichotomy going on, and it's hard to process because the needs are different area by area.
And I think that's huge because so many people are like, oh, well, let's look back to Katrina, right? This is very different from that, right? Like, in every area. So I live in New Orleans, but both of my parents were born and raised in Mississippi. Mississippi was the ground zero, but New Orleans got all the attention,
Yeah.
and so there was rural parts in Mississippi where literally, I mean, my parents are both from a town of 900 that's right on the state line in Louisiana, Mississippi, which was considered ground zero of where Katrina went. And I mean, they had 28 feet of water. And
Mhm.
um, there's a level that area has struggled to come back because of focus, right? So the media focus, a lot of different areas where they keep hearing, the big cities. And so then what do people send? Even like the missions groups, like, hey, I'm gonna go help in this area. Go, unless they're diverted, hey, no, we really need you, in these rural areas. And so being that it's a more rural market, I can already tell that's gonna be tough. And then it's not like, hey, they can't rebuy a car. People were already with this economy very liquidity was getting sucked out, right? They were living on credit card debt, stuff like that. So it's not like people had tons of savings just to go, hey, just for when the emergency happens, right? And it's not like there's public transportation, right? Oh, I don't have a car, but I can just take the bus.
Right. You have no density. And even the
All of
people who
that.
say we should have it, you can't support public transportation in a
Yeah.
rural market that's not dense. And it's, to your point and I'd forgotten about that because I've been railing about mortgage debt. Most people are pretty maxed out on credit cards right now. So there's no flexibility on anything. And now you got me thinking about Katrina too. We were in Bay St. Louis for this summer for vacation. We did New Orleans and rolled all the way to Biloxi so my kids could see some of the historic sites. And the remaining piers in
Yeah.
Biloxi from where Katrina wiped them out, and Bay St. Louis just now came back. I mean, these
Yeah.
last few years. And I don't want to see that in my mountain communities, but by the same token, I want them to come back. And there's a lot of concern that with the new FEMA rules and with
Yeah.
all of the hysteria over climate stuff, they're not going to be allowed to build. And that's wrong in my opinion.
Yeah. So we're gonna see. So I've worked a number of hurricanes, and even since the last 10 years being in real estate as an investor, I've really said, hey, I want to take my background in missions of helping people, and I don't want to be the the person who's just going for, hey, I just want to buy houses. Hey, how can I help provide? Like, what can I do? How can when my and being in Orleans, we get hit a lot. When my community in the Gulf Coast gets hit, how can I help?
Right.
And what I found is just, and this is a generalization, every storm is different, is the first 3 years, it's like there's an economic bubble because regardless of what's happening in the economy, you've got, I mean, insurance claims are starting to pay out and people are making, but with every storm, the complexities, right? So right now, you know, let's talk about that one video that you had. And this is something that's new to this storm that not a lot, I don't know if there's this level you can even say with other storms, but it's this idea of you had that one video, I would say went viral in ways where it was talking about how the woman who had the lot that washed away. Tell us that story and let's talk about that.
Well, she's not the only one I've talked to since then, but the point that I was referencing is that there's a lady that I know, and a few months ago, she closed on a lot that she wanted to build her dream retirement home on the banks of a river around other houses. Well, after the storm, the lot is gone. And I mean, as in she bought a survey for this lot, and what was surveyed out is no longer there because it got carved away by
Yeah.
the river. And I just don't know that there's any accurate way to categorize how big the water got,
Yeah.
how strong that water is. Although if you want to see a good representation of it, pull up any current picture of Lake Lure, North Carolina, because you cannot see the water for the debris in it. And that's a good representation of the volume of what we're talking about here. So her lot got carved away. She paid cash for it. Nobody
Mhm.
carries insurance on dirt. So she has no insurance. She paid cash for it. The dirt's gone. So what does she have, a ghost lot? And she's like, well, what do I do? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And of course, I've had some people in Florida reach out who are used to erosion taking lots away.
Mhm.
And I don't know that it's not quite the same thing, because I think in coastal areas that's almost baked in. There's nothing baked in this area. I think
Yeah.
probably realistically her money's just gone, and her dream of living there is gone. But then I was also thinking about the houses down from her, some of which had mortgages. They're
Yeah.
gone. And when the house is gone and the dirt is gone, you're not allowed to rebuild. You're the homeowner. You've
Yeah.
got $400,000 in mortgage debt on an $800,000 house. You paid it down, right? So
Right.
you start thinking about the bigger picture. You
Yeah.
bought that thing, you've paid the note down, you were doing so good, you're at 50% loan to value, and now the house is gone, but you still have the debt. And okay, well, now the banks are going to offer you forbearance. Okay, great. So I can delay my payments on a house that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And now you're being told, okay, just get a loan to rebuild. Okay, so I got to get a loan to rebuild it. So now I've got to double or triple my debt service. So now I'm really going to be a debt slave to a storm that I couldn't control when I was the financially responsible one paying down the note. And what I would love to see, Courtney, and I don't know that we're going to see it, but I'm
Yeah.
hopeful. Are JP Morgan and Bank of America going to step up and say, apply to have your mortgage forgiven? Because if they can send a surveyor out and the house is gone and the dirt's half gone, but you owe us some mortgage money, could they write it off? They're the only ones that can write it off.
Yeah.
The internet's really helpful advice, which, the internet's just, don't read comment threads, y'all. But in my comment threads, it's basically, well, they should just declare bankruptcy. Oh, okay, great. So they should declare bankruptcy and destroy their credit further over a debt for a collateral that no longer exists. You can see why the despair sets in, because there's no good answer here, because we've not experienced this before, where hundreds of houses got wiped out. And it's not that I don't believe people are responsible for their debt. I totally, that you signed on the dotted line, you knew you took the risk,
Yeah.
and maybe they do have some insurance, but I wish the mortgages could just be wiped out. And frankly, I'm the person who says, if we can give billions of dollars to Lebanon and Ukraine and Israel, then the government would be better off taking care of this financially disciplined couple that was paying down their house, and
Yeah.
not let them be burdened forever.
Yeah. And it's such a complex problem, you
Right.
know, and it's, who's more deserving than others, right? So you've got people who this woman who had a lot, who hadn't built on it yet and didn't have insurance.
She's
And
just out.
right. And so you get a lot of people who, I mean, a lot of people after Katrina, if they didn't have insurance, they just took it on the chin. I know a lot of investors who self-insured their properties because they're like, hey, if a disaster comes, I at least still have the land, right? Well, now we have found a fallacy to that because here in
Right.
the mountains, you've got, well, the land is no longer there, right? Through it, and so there's a level there that you're gonna find the folks who are kind of shit out of luck because of that, right? So will something come for them? They're probably the most vulnerable. The ones who have a mortgage, like so say there was a house on it, there was a probability they were required if they were near water to maybe have flood insurance. And the majority of people's flood insurance is FEMA, right? That there is a
Well,
process.
except in the mountains, FEMA didn't have those as flood zones because of the topography. So
Okay.
the rivers had not gone up 10 feet. So
Right.
it
It's once in a
wasn't
lifetime.
flood
Yeah.
zone, so there's no flood insurance. But then even if they had homeowners insurance, this is the other tricky wicket here. The markets have exploded in the last 4 years. And so
Yeah.
housing prices are through the roof. Most people, when you buy the house 10 years ago and you paid $400,000 for it, your insurance premium and your policy is for $400,000 or for replacement cost. And then when the market takes your house up to 800, how many people really go back to the insurance company and say, "Oh, let's adjust my replacement cost so that I could afford to replace it if it changed"? Most people do not voluntarily go raise their premiums. So the policy is probably still sitting at 400, but to rebuild that house is going to take 1 million with labor cost and materials. So even if they have insurance, it's not enough. And again, there's no
Yeah.
easy answer here. Should the homeowner have updated their policy? Absolutely. Are they going to be punished for not doing it? Absolutely.
Hey guys, Courtney Fricke here. We've got Aussie Steve. And look, if you have a deal that needs to get moved, Southeast Louisiana, even in South Mississippi, we're your folks. We are the largest dispo company, really in the greater New Orleans area, even Southeast Louisiana. We have great contacts in South Mississippi as well. Steve, why do we move more deals than others?
Just we're very deep in this market, so Greater New Orleans can be really confusing for national wholesalers. The comps are hard. We change block for block. We got flood zones. We get a lot of hurricanes and the likes, and just a lot of the national platforms don't have the buyers on their list. So we are deep with buyers, but we're deep with relationships, which is really important in this market. So we love JVing with out-of-state investors.
Like I said, we do a ton of business with other investors. So go to homebuyerlouisiana.com/Courtney, fill out the information, we'll get in touch with you and we'll move this deal along. Well, and that's so I don't know if you know this, but I'm on the radio every weekend here in New Orleans, the largest radio station. It's one of 35 in the country that was meant to help during the Cold War as like an alert system. And it's a live call-in show every Saturday. And this show was created after Katrina to help people rebuild. My co-host was asked to help people rebuild and literally take phone calls for 2 hours on Saturdays. And because he's a well-known contractor, building science expert, and he does legal expert witness work for, building science. And so he is fantastic. And so 5 years ago, he said, I've been looking for someone like you who handles all the crazy sides of real estate. And so I answer for the last 5 years, I've been answering all the real estate questions. So like whatever the public, throws at me. But this radio show was built to people to call in, and whether it's I'm trying to hire someone, like what type of contractor can fix this, or hey, I have this problem, I don't even know what to do. How do I want to, or I want to fix it myself, So a lot of things like that, right? And there's a level with that. I've learned a lot through that radio show, but like I remember in 2021 when lumber went through the roof. That was one of the things that I was beating my drum on the radio where I was saying, "Hey, go look at your insurance policy," right? And then there's a level in which most people won't do that. Is there responsibility on the insurance brokers? Probably not, right? Like I don't know what that looks like, right? And to help inform people, right? Because some people say, I don't know what my policy means. Like I don't know what all that entails. But I can see people being underinsured. Absolutely. So one of my thoughts is the hope is that at least some people who have a mortgage, like they had a house, I bet you with them not having flood insurance all day long, their policies are going to say, oh, well, that was a flood event, you didn't have that, so it didn't cover it, right? And they're going to fight.
That's why we
And
don't call it a flood event. This is a wind and water event. Very
Mm.
important to note that when you talk to insurance, it's a wind and water event, not a flood event.
well, and so then I'm curious to see what that looks like. So my co-host who does the legal expert work and he started doing that after Katrina. And he gets hired either by the insurance or by the policyholder. He's non-biased. He just goes to share his findings on the building science part. He is in more lawsuits right now than he was after Katrina because they're refusing to pay out over semantics and a lot of things. Because I mean, I don't know, what were you guys seeing beforehand in Louisiana and then in Florida? We were seeing, this insurance crisis before these events happened. What were you guys seeing? Were policies rising? Were y'all having any issues on insurance, or was it normal?
Well, like you guys, we have that big coastal area. So that third of our state that's our coastal region is the biggest insurance problem we have in the state because of hurricanes and storm damage. And of course, that wherever they take a loss, it hurts. The thing that's unique about North Carolina, we have a rate bureau that polices our insurance companies' ability to change rates. And so we're the last state in the nation with an insurance bureau. And this past year, the insurers asked for a 99% rate increase.
Yeah.
They were looking to double it. And we got it scaled back. The realtors went to war on that. And I can't even remember where it landed because I was so upset about the proposal, but it landed probably close to a 25% rate increase. So it's higher than it was, but our rate bureau has been able to keep it in check.
Yeah.
But to be honest, and you've probably looked at the numbers too, the real cost of insurance is a hell of a lot higher than what we're all paying in premiums. It's not a sustainable model right now. And again, I don't know the answer to that, but I know a lot of people that I'm friends with in Florida, they're self-insuring now because what's the point of paying $30,000 a year in premiums? If you just stick that in a bank account, it'll eventually catch up with you. And the insurance companies are banking on that right now. They're banking on people bailing out of the system, but those are also your most financially qualified who bail out of the system. So you're only leaving into the pool the ones who don't have the resources and are going to need every dime. So I think insurance is the biggest ticking time bomb we have in the real estate space at all. And until Congress gets intelligent, which is a stretch, until they're willing to do flood reform and not just kick the can down the road on flood insurance, they have to reform the program, which would lead to reforms in all of insurance where you have a better marketplace of public and private. Because right now, of course, FEMA is your only option on flood insurance unless you go to Lloyd's of London. And it's super expensive. I mean, it's super cheap because it's underwritten. Lloyd's is super expensive. If you put more competitors in the market, you probably hit a middle ground. Same thing on regular insurance. Get more competition into the market, get more policy owners out there so we can balance this risk. I don't know, but I think that's the biggest affordability problem we have.
Look, it absolutely is. I mean, I had an agent call me and she said, Courtney, I need help. I had a listing appointment. I went, it was a second home in New Orleans and it was on the water. And the guy owned it free and clear. And they had, they were getting their 80s. They're like, hey, we're ready to sell. But so they self-insured for a long time. So because they had no policy, they go and get a policy for the first time for everything, wind, hail, all of that, and flood. And it came back at $53,000 a year. So then I go, right? Like, and so she freaks out. She calls me and I go, well, congratulations on your multi-million-dollar listing. She goes, no, Courtney, it's a $350,000 property. Right. So like we're now, I think she was able to kind of work some things, maybe get down a little bit, but like the reality there is, I do agree with you. I think it's a ticking time bomb. I am watching this like a hawk because I do think it's going to break. Insurance is going to break.
Yeah. Look at the size of the claims on this one. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida. There's going to be so many claims come in from this. And then you add Milton on top. If that breaks an insurance company, the effects of this storm are going to be felt by every homeowner in this country. And I don't think enough people have realized that there's a cascading effect there.
Yeah.
And even if they realize it, I just don't know what we do with it.
Well, and that's the thing. So we've been having this insurance crisis in Louisiana since 2021. So we started seeing the issues. I mean, I would have a duplex that was 175,000. It was what it's worth. My insurance policy just to cover it was 8,500, and flood was maybe 900. So like such a small. The majority of it was wind and hail, and so I'm seeing so many investors go belly up. I'm seeing so many investors cash out and flee, and but I'm like, you don't understand. This is such a big issue that when I go speak in Ohio next week, where Midwest, all, and I'm like, you don't understand. They're starting to tell me that they're seeing their policies creep up because there's a dollar cost average that these reinsurers are, pitting across the board. And so for everyone who says, oh, well, you made a choice about living on the coast, not the people in Appalachia.
That makes
right?
me so angry when I hear that, by the way.
Look, tell me about it. I'm like,
so people shouldn't live in their generational communities.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's going to be very
Not
interesting to see what happens. What was that?
Not everybody on the coast is schwanky. And not everybody in the mountains is a hillbilly, and
Right.
not everybody has a second home everywhere. I mean, I'm so tired of the generalizations. Oh, they're crazy making.
Well, and so these things you're seeing, so you're not seeing a ton of people moving. We're very early in the process where you're not seeing insurance claims getting paid out.
Yeah, we're nowhere close to that.
I mean, you guys are still in search and rescue and recovery phase. Look, I'll be honest, when I worked Florence, when the cadaver dogs came out, and after me being there for a week and a half, I was like, that's when I knew to tap out. I knew I did not have the ability to go tag bodies, like, and I know that that's happening, and it's horrific, right?
I admire the people who could do it because I can't be anywhere near it. It's
yeah. As an I
just bring dignity to those families, and I'm so grateful for their work, but holy crap, it's bad.
So there's a phase of like emergency survival, right? Like getting people out of there, getting them help, or bringing them emergency supplies. So you guys have been doing a ton of that. And so then going from there, you've got, where people are going to start getting into a phase of, insurance claims, and that all takes a while. For that whole entire process, literally from the date of an event, you have 2 years to file for a claim. And a lot of times that first year is people just working on getting paid out. It does not happen immediately. So everyone's like, oh, that you'll just get an insurance payout. I was like, okay, in 6 months, maybe, or you might get the first draw then, and then you might have to contest it to get, more.
That is you are no longer allowed to comment on the internet. Person who said that, you are banned from commenting.
Look, seriously. So we've got a way to go. And so you're seeing a lot of people who are staying there. You guys get winters, right? Like you guys get cold winters.
Well, they have snow in the mountains. So again, this is like the weirdest thing about where this hurricane hit is if you're at the coast, your immediate concern is mold, right? Because you've got the heat doesn't go away, the humidity's still there.
Yep.
The fungal growth immediately kicks in. So when this storm hit, it was warm. So you have wet houses. So of course the fungal growth starts because we're a very humid state.
Sure.
And then a week later, we're down in the 30s and you've got frost and snow. So we've got people with hypothermia and they're living in tents, so they don't have heat.
Yeah.
So then it went from that to this past week, it warmed back up again. And so the mold starts back. So it's just biblical prophecy coming to bear is all this is. But when you look at it, the request I had a week ago were for propane heaters for the houses with no power and the tent people. So get an indoor certified propane heater. It's my number one thing we're trailering up. This week it flipped to dehumidifiers. We need dehumidifiers. I get the moisture out of the houses to keep the mold down. So last night's load had heaters and dehumidifiers on it. Like
yeah.
So it's an opportunity for those of us that are grassroots. And I am, of course, one of many people. My team is huge of people who've emerged to help. Everybody's got a little team. It's like this grassroots, just a network. And all of us are just responding as we get needs. And so it was water and diapers, and then it was food, and now it's propane heaters, and then it's dehumidifiers, but we already
Yeah.
got a request tomorrow for blankets and coats because it's supposed to get cold again. And so I don't know that any other storm has had to go with the back and forth between seasons before.
And look, shoot, then you're gonna actually start needing to get, the things that come with the cold, right? Cold medicine and things like that. Because one day you're hot, the next day you're freezing, and you're getting, and then you're wet, so you're getting sick, and like the basic things people,
Except
underestimate.
girl, in the mountains, they use elderberry and they got some ginseng. And so we got people in the mountains that know how to medicate, so they be all right.
They'll be all right. All right, there you go.
But not
So
the city people. The city people that need some Mucinex, they're going to have to ask for something.
there you go. And so, the needs, vary as this path of recovery is moving forward. But as a lot of people want to stay there, right? Or, there's the uniqueness where they don't want to leave, which look, I saw that in Mississippi and in Louisiana a ton. I'm not leaving. My family's been here for generations. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'll tough it out. That can be difficult. And so let's talk about housing. Our So if they're not wanting to leave, for example, if they're not wanting to come to your, an hour away to Concord to start renting or to buy, what are you guys seeing happen for temporary housing? Is everyone just living in shelters? You mentioned some tents. Like, what are you seeing?
Well, there's tent cities. There are people living in their storage sheds. There's shelters that are up and running. Of course, nobody really wants to be in a shelter because you have no privacy and dignity in there. I'm working on doing a building blitz of storage sheds. What we're trying to walk is the line of permitting and regulation, because I've heard from so many well-meaning people want to bring in tiny houses. Sounds great. You're going to do a tiny house, you're going to have a foundation, you're going to have permits, you're talking plumbing, electrical, the whole kit and caboodle, and they're great, but the time log on that is going to be absolutely batshit insane, because the county permitting processes in all these areas was already long because of the fact that we have so much regulatory burden. So what I'm hoping to accomplish is get people storage sheds that are shed size, they're not permitted size, make sure they have some insulation where they can get out of the cold, put the little propane heater in there and manage on their own property while they fix it and get it back up and running. Or for these renters, we have had like some of the nicest volunteers on the planet, people who've driven in from other states, Courtney, and have left their campers behind. Just left the camper for somebody to live in. We actually served a family last week that's been living in a carnival trailer, like the little pop-up carnivals that show up in parking lots, and they found an abandoned one, and so they moved into it, and we helped them outfit it so they could live in it. But that's how desperate it is, and you won't see that when you look at the cities, because again, the cities are okay, and it's the country areas that are not. So I think it's going to be an interesting slog.
Well, so you've got people they're going to fend for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have personal experience with FEMA providing RVs, providing, call them tiny houses, right?
We hadn't had none of that yet.
Exactly. It takes a long time. But
you know what happened after Katrina? You remember all that, right?
Exactly.
They had trailers, but they were holding them back, and then the contractors got paid for them and they got sold for pennies on the dollar. It was a huge scandal.
Well, look, I mean, this is the government that pays, $500 for a toilet seat, so
they're never good managers of our taxpayer dollars.
So
ever.
then here's what I saw after Hurricane Laura, which was 2020, that devastated, the southwest side of Louisiana. I was involved with a situation with FEMA where they were bringing in RVs to basically, they were bringing in RVs and they were bringing in mobile homes. But again, it took time for it to happen. But the RVs, what was crazy, you would think they were the old like the FEMA ones where it was all the same, like basically the simple ones. They didn't use those. Remember the formaldehyde, like the chemical issues with those. So what happened was they were name brand. I watched them pull in 45 RVs, and that FEMA, I don't, my assumption is they purchased them or something. And then literally they were name brands. So they're going to these dealers and just buying, base model type, RVs, and they're bringing them in, getting people, they're going, sending people door to door, and so you have those. And again, some people will put them in their front door, or for people who, like, for example, don't have a lot anymore or something, you still have issues. You got to tie into water, you got to tie in electricity, you got to have a pump out, system that's complicated. And so it's not perfect. There's tons of fallacies within, government distribution of stuff. And so it's going to be very interesting. But what you start to see is all the manufacturers get backed up out of demand. Because then you get people who say, I have money, I'm just going to go buy my own RV, not wait on the government or whatever. And so they're buying. You've got contractors who are sending guys who they're like, well, hey, they can't, there's no hotels available, so I'm going to just buy an RV and send them, you got all that. And so there becomes a huge rush on demand for RVs and mobile homes. And so that's going to also be interesting to watch as well. So look, I know that we could kind of keep talking through this, but I think it's so interesting for people to hear what you're seeing, because this is not a normal storm. What hit with Helene and how it hit, especially in the mountains, the impacts there. Look, the big cities are going to get all the attention, but these smaller towns, people don't hear these stories, all these things. And so, from a real estate perspective, what do you think? What have been some lessons that you've been learning through this? Once, it's going to take some time, but once this moves forward, what are you going to say? Hey, these are some of the things that I'm learning, that I learned through this. Is there anything that comes to mind with that?
Well, after my first video went viral that I had put out at the end of my run when I was so irritated with the government, and it went wildly viral, landed on all these different people's accounts. And then people started sending me money as donations, like, we trust you. I'm like, I'm a lady you saw on a video on the internet. And it's striking to me that thousands of people sent me donations, and I have spent the money, buddy. I got receipts. We're just spending it and sending it back out there. But you trust me, a person you don't know, more than you trust any government agency.
Yeah.
They not earned our trust in a long time, more than you trust our charitable organizations like the Red Cross, because they are absolutely using your money for overhead. And you start to realize the lack of trust in anything big is gone, but the trust in each other is still really great. And I think that's it's just been interesting to process that. But the other thing I've noticed is, as a grassroots person who has been working with a grassroots team that literally sprung out of nowhere. So I have a text thread of people who are willing to truck and trailer. I have another text thread of shoppers, and I have another text thread of people who are my contacts in each county. Here's where the need is. We need an umbrella to give all the grassroots people a place to say, here's my expertise. I can do search and rescue. I've got a cadaver dog. Because every time I post a need, I need a GC, I need a cadaver dog, I need round bales. Every time I post a need, it gets filled immediately. So I've actually started a 501c3. I just got word today that my paperwork's approved. It's going to be called Patriot Relief. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to create that umbrella so that any grassroots person can organize and do the things that the churches did when the country was built. Of we start with a small hub, and then we can spoke out and take care of all the needs, because the American people are willing. And if you give them away, then it's doable. So that's what I've learned in the last 30 days, is that we need a revamp of how we do these things. And frankly, I pray that the election brings us somebody in a cabinet that will take these agencies to task and rework them, because they need to be reworked. The grifting and the waste is insane, and I'm done. If you can send me your dollars and I can go get a wholesale price on heaters myself and then deliver it for that cost, then the $500 toilet seats the government's been paying for, those days need to be over.
It's and it's wild. I have numerous stories in my head of people who, you know, go everything from government contracts to, various situations. And you're right. It is, it is very interesting. And I think there's something interesting to also point out the role of content where, you
Yes.
know, people have a lot of different views on it, right? But it can be powerful, right?
Mhm.
It can also be negative, right? Like like it's got its demons, but you have a phone that, the internet, I'm not going to say it's free 99, but Instagram and TikTok, all those free 99 to use them. And for the most part, you are getting out there and just sharing your story, right? Not some huge, production or nothing
Right.
like that, right? And it is reaching people, and you're able to get results. And I think a lot of people, and you've known this for a while with content, it's a reminder of the power of it, of getting the word out, doing things. And I think you are right. And the libertarian in me is going to, there is that broken trust. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in these big events with broken trust, and so what that'll all how that all play out. So moving forward, where's the best place for people to stay in touch with you for your updates on, the work you're continuing in Western North Carolina?
Well, as much as I was a late arrival to TikTok, it's the only place that's not censoring me right now because I keep getting shut down on Instagram and Facebook. X does not censor me, but it says most people are not X people. So I'm Lee Thomas Brown on any of these networks except for X, where I'm Lee Brown. If it's got underscores and exclamation points and dashes in it, that's a scammer. There's so many versions of me out there right now from all of these little jerk scammers that are
Yeah.
taking money away from hurricane victims with their fake Venmo accounts. And I just have to point out, that's probably the angriest I've been, that my account on Venmo got flagged as suspicious when there were 13 fake Lee Browns out there, all of them gathering money.
Yeah.
And I said, you sucked. Venmo sucked because you took money away from disaster victims.
Yeah.
And shut me down because you let the scammers stay up. But I know it's because of where I am politically, but whatever. So yeah, follow me for updates. And I'm going to be posting one here shortly now that I've gotten my mind right about something it's going to be inflammatory, but I don't really care right now because we have the word has to be out there. And it's like you said, content really matters because you can get information out there. And I just wish people would stop arguing when they don't know for themselves, but don't tell me I'm wrong just because you didn't experience it.
Exactly. So, and so before I let you go, folks, go find her, follow her. I think you have a link tree that shares other things as well.
Yeah, it is in my link tree, and you can know it's the real me because I'm friends with Courtney, and so obviously the scammers don't know Courtney.
There you go. Stay the hell away. So, um, for the real estate investors, real estate agents, people in the real estate world who are like, hey, whether they experience this themselves or they see what's going on, they want to help. What do you want to say to those folks who are seeing what's going on and they're like, hey, I want to help. I don't live there. Either I don't have I may not have the money. Like, what do you say for folks who are just seeing this? Maybe they're feeling numb. Maybe what is kind of your message to folks about, what's going on in Western North Carolina, especially the folks in real estate? How can you speak to them?
The most important thing that anybody can do is pray right now because the people of Western North Carolina need your prayers for resilience and for comfort and for the trauma they're going through.
Mhm.
And then there's also the trauma to real estate agents. I mean, let's just realize this entire profession depends on houses. And in one county alone, we have 800 houses that are gone in an already inventory starved market. So how are they going to make a living when a grocery store can get up and running and that person can get paid again? It's going to be a long time before these real estate agents can get paid again. So we're probably going to lose them out of the business, or they
Yeah.
might move and start over. And that's not good for the consumer who needs a good real estate agent to guide them through the process. So you
Yeah.
pray for your real estate brethren, you pray for the people of North Carolina. And then if your business is not busy and you want to do some hands-on work, you can come do hands-on work. And Samaritan's Purse is probably the best place to plug in to do on the ground work. A lot of the churches will have mission trips, obviously, all the way through next summer is probably your big mission trip time. But Samaritan's Purse is deploying people right now, pulling carpet out of houses, pulling drywall,
Yeah.
doing just the cleanup work of filling dumpsters with just trash and branches. And I don't know what we're going to do with the debris. I don't know anybody's ever has figured this out because the debris is
Massive.
next level. I don't even if you mulched all the branches down, we've lost so much old growth tree, we've lost virgin growth. And if
Yeah.
you mulch all that, where the hell are you going to put the mulch? But anyway, so there's all these logistical things going on. But you pray and you show up, and if you're physically unable to show up and you're not somebody who's a believer in the Lord, well, go find the Lord. But then after you find him, just be involved somewhere. So maybe in your community, you find a church that's doing a donation, go help them. Or maybe you have a homeless shelter that you could volunteer at, do something on behalf of Western North Carolina where you live. I think
Yeah.
that's always a good way to give back, is you can't be in the war zone, but you can help where you are. And that helps it helps all of us get back on our feet.
Yeah.
We'll take money. If you have money, we'll take it. And I will buy supplies with it. But the most important thing we can do right now is pray, because the Lord is working in a mighty way through this storm, and we're not going to diminish any of his miracles.
There's a level, you mentioned the word trauma. People don't realize it. Like I mean, there's a level when major storms happen, I don't sleep right. I've had panic attacks like there's that documentary, Katrina Babies, I think, on Netflix, talking about the kids who went through Katrina. I was a little bit older, but like stuff happens, right? And so, there's always here in New Orleans, we have, pre-Hurricane Katrina and post-Hurricane. It was a defining moment in people's lives. And so there's a lot of stuff like that. A lot of people, they're asking big questions right now. What am I going to do with life? Where am I going to, between find my next meal, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? My job is no longer, they're asking big questions, and they absolutely need comfort, guidance, and really, you were talking about resilience. They need that too, to be able to feel hope that
Right.
they should stick around for tomorrow to find that next step. And so, Leah, I appreciate all that you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing, for the people of Western North Carolina. I appreciate the content that you're putting out there to help people see like what's going on, especially in those rural towns. And obviously within the real estate industry, I appreciate how you are educating folks. Because look, I cannot tell you how many people I've met who, when a storm hits and they're in the industry, they're just like, I don't know what to do. Because there's usually going to be a level of leaders who rise up and say, hey, like, a lot of people, it's just figuring out, it's problem solving. Hey, like it's not, there's no guidebook for this. And so, my friend, I'm cheering you on, praying for you guys, and looking for ways to help.
Well, I appreciate you having me on your show to talk about this a little bit and give your listeners a little bit of color commentary, and keep putting your stuff out there, because we're going to need investors that are willing to come in and support people. And that's not going to be favorable in some people's eyes, but I know that there are times when investors are the answer to a problem. So just remember, if you have the ability to be a solution, then
Yeah.
we can connect you.
I probably one of my next episodes that I do is I want to have a conversation around this. So I put underneath as an investor, I have no reason to have like a name tag, but it's literally, it says solutions-based real estate investor. Because I was like, the word real estate investor doesn't encompass what I want to do.
Right.
Well, you get a lot of bad definitions of it. And so years ago, when I'd be in rooms with real estate agents, everyone would have their name tag, but me as an investor, I was like, well, I don't know what to put on there. But a while back, I put that on there because I was like, I want them to know I'm here to help. And so I absolutely want to figure out my way to talk to investors, because cold calling people right now and saying, do you want to sell, is not it.
Not in the mountains. Plus, they're private people anyway. So what you should do is you just show up and do some work, and then people know who you are. Well, then later they can call you, because they will call you if they want you, but they're more likely to call the person they've met.
Yes. And
But
so
isn't that life? Isn't that how we should all be operating? So
I run a 100% referral based and repeat business. Now that's the model I run. I used to do the, the prospecting and all that. And so like I get the need for prospecting and I get all that, but like it is wild. Especially as someone who's like, I want to be here to help solve problems. And when I'm not the best fit, like after this, I have to make a phone call to a guy and tell him I am not your best bet. And give him like 3 or 4 suggestions of
Right.
how he can get more for his house than to sell to me, to help solve his problem. So Leigh, I appreciate you guys. Leigh Thomas Brown, I'll put that on the show notes as well. I might put some of the videos that you shared on there as well. And Leigh, thanks again. I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your story.
I appreciate you, my friend. It's good to see you.